Representative Bryant, that was a nice picture of you with your grandkids.
Thank you. Yeah, they are a joy.
Yep.
What do they call you?
Grandpa.
Good, that'll work.
All my wife's men would call it Bumper, but I didn't want any part of that. She's Nanny.
We're live,
All
so
right.
you know.
All right.
We have enough. We're all set, Darlene?
We do. There's 13 on the screen, so Sam just popped on, so Wayne's still trying to connect.
Well, we'll be at that for a while. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Committee on Transportation. We welcome you all here with us today. This public hearings we'll be having. Reminder that the meeting is being live streamed on the committee's YouTube channel, and all participants via Zoom can be seen and heard if the mic is on. Testifiers cannot be seen or heard until they are recognized by the chair. Meeting is also recorded and available on the committee's YouTube after the meeting is concluded. Remind everybody to make sure your name is appearing as you registered on the screen. And also remind everybody that the public hearing process will start with the sponsor of the bill, followed by the co-sponsors if there are any, followed by the public based on how they registered, that is testifying proponents first, opponents second, and neither for nor against last. When called upon, you'll be promoted from attendee to participant, and when finished, you'll be returned to the attendee status. When you're called on, be sure to make sure your mic is unmuted and state your name, residence, and any affiliation you have with an organization. All individuals who wish to testify must register in advance of the public hearing in order to be called upon to testify. We'd like to introduce ourselves now to everybody, and we will start with Senator Farren. Good afternoon, Senator Farren.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Brad Farren. I live in Norridgewell, and I represent Senate District 3, which is the majority of Somerset County.
Thank you, sir. Senator Ben Chipman. No, Senator Chipman. We'll go to Representative Wayne Perry.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Wayne Perry. I represent House District 10, which covers Arundel, Dayton, and most of Lyman.
Thank you, sir. Representative Lynn Williams. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Lynn Williams. I represent House District 135, which is Bar Harbor, Mount Desert, and Lemoyne.
Thank you. And Representative Dustin White. Representative Mike Perkins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is Mike Perkins. I represent District Number 77. That's Oakland and Sydney. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Representative Mark Bryant.
Thank you, Senator. I'm Mark Bryan. I represent House District 24, part of the town of Wyndham. Welcome all.
Thank you. Representative Bruce White.
Thank you, Senator Diamond. And I am Representative Bruce White, District 109, which is half of Waterville.
Thank you, sir. Representative Tom Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Martin. I represent House District number 57, which is Green and Sabattis.
Thank you. Representative Kevin O'Connell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Kevin O'Connell, District 128, most of the city of Brewer.
Thank you, sir. Representative Rich Seabrook.
Good afternoon, Senator. I'm Representative Rich Sebra, District 68, the lovely towns of Naples, Sebago, Baldwin, Cornish, and part of Parsonsfield.
Thank you, sir. Representative House Chair Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, folks. My name is Danny Martin. I represent House 150, located in northern Worcester County.
Thank you, sir. I'm Bill Diamond, a senator from District 26, live in Wyndham, and my town's circles Sebago Lake. Our analyst today is Sam Prower. And our clerk, of course, Darlene Simino, who's going in a straight line, which is, that's a full-time job in itself. So thank you for that. We appreciate your help. We have 5 bills today. And I'll remind everybody who was people who are testifying that we're not going to use a clock today, but I'm going to ask you all to be precise since many of you are on the same side of an issue on various bills. So I would ask that please do not be too redundant, repetitive. If somebody's already made the point, you can just so note. And we look forward to your testimony. It's very helpful to us as we consider these bills. So we'll start with LD 836, an act to enhance compliance with motor vehicle insurance requirements, presented by Representative Stearns of Guilford. Good afternoon, Representative Stearns.
Yeah, I gotta find, hold on. Here he comes.
Representative Stearns, good afternoon. And I think he's muted.
I think he is too. Yep. You need to unmute.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished member of the Joint Committee on Transportation. I'm Paul Stearns, and I represent House District 119 of Piscataquis County. And I'm here today to request that you vote ought not to pass on LD 836. While gathering information on this issue, it became apparent to me that unintended consequences were likely to far outweigh any benefits. So I thank you for your time and consideration in this matter. I'm not really sure how it got referred to transportation. It's really an insurance issue in the first place, but it might as well die in this graveyard.
Well, thank you, Representative Stearns. I just want to make sure we're all clear. You are asking us for a ought not to pass.
That's correct, Senator.
Okay, thank you. Just want to make that extra clear. Questions from the committee? Hold on, I get my little participants here. Seeing none. Thank you, sir. Are there others? We have others who are scheduled to appear in opposition. First is Linda Grant. Ms. Grant, noting that the request has been made. Welcome. Good afternoon.
Thank you, Senator Diamond, and Representative Martin and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. My name is Linda Grant, and I am, actually, you might want me to turn my video on too, huh? There we go. And I'm a resident of Monmouth. So I guess proceeding forward, you would like to hear my testimony in opposition?
Well,
from what I just
you're
heard.
certainly welcome to leave it with us. The sponsor has asked for us to ought not to pass, but if you anything you would want to say, knowing that, well, of course, we want to hear what you have to say.
I mean, and I have not had direct conversations with the sponsor, but this is a bill that has is an exact replica of something that was in place, and I think you have a copy of my testimony.
Yep.
But in 2003, there was an insurance bill that did this very thing, and it did have some unintended consequences. There's some significant impacts to the public. There is certainly a significant fiscal note to this if something were to be introduced along this line again. So with that said, and the testimony that you have, I think that says it for the Bureau, but we would stand in opposition of this.
Thank you for that, Ms. Grant, and it's nice to see you again, by the way.
Thank you. Same to you.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Adam Cody is the next line.
Not seeing him on the list.
Okay. We next have Bruce Garrity.
Senator Simon and Representative Martin, given the position of the sponsor, we don't feel we need to provide any testimony to the committee at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garrity. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, we'll now ask for Charles Sultan. Charlie, are you available?
I am, and thank you, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and the committee. It's good to see you all. I just want to say that Representative Stearns' action in asking for an ought not to pass just shows what a great legislator that he is, and everything. We had a nice chat about the bill. As Ms. Grant said, we tried this, it didn't work. And just for some fun, when this bill first passed in around 2003, or if not a little sooner, the bill was actually in two different committees. In the insurance committee, it was voted ought not to pass 0 to 13 or 13 to 0. And then
froze up on us, Charlie. Still there? Think we've lost him? Darlene, you're on mute as well.
I just pulled him back in. I don't know what happened to him.
Okay,
but-
Charlie, you're back. We lost you for a minute.
Yeah, I got dropped. Sorry. It was interesting, fun, just a little tidbit of history. Two committees, same bill. One went unanimous, ought not to pass. One committee went unanimous to pass.
Oh.
It was literally a two committee fist fight in the House floor. It was really kind of interesting to watch, and your predecessors won. And I remember then Senator Savage, a few years later, when we told her it was going to be a debacle, agreed, and the bill had to be resubmitted and then killed. So we tried and it didn't work. So I just want to thank Representative Stearns for listening and withdrawing the bill. So thank you all.
Thank you, Mr. Sultan. And also, it's nice to see you again. Haven't seen you for a long time. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
That pretty much, the list of people who are registered to testify, I think that pretty much does it. Excuse me. We will now close the public hearing on LD 836. We'll now open the public hearing on LD 899. 899 is an act to protect privacy and security at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, presented by Representative O'Neill of Saco. Good afternoon and welcome, Representative O'Neill.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
as we discussed earlier, Representative O'Neill could not make it this afternoon, and she asked me to simply present her bill for her.
All right, thank you.
With that in mind, Mr. Chair, Senator Diamond, members of the Committee on Transportation, on behalf of Representative Maggie O'Neill, I am presenting LD 899, an act to protect privacy and security at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. You folks will note that this is a concept piece of legislation, and it's my understanding, according to Representative O'Neill, that our Secretary of State, who will be following me, presenting some testimony, would like to carry this forward. So with that in mind, I would attempt to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Representative Martin. And just to make sure we heard that, her request of the committee is this be carried over till next year.
It's my understanding that this bill is being sponsored by Representative O'Neill on behalf of our Secretary of State. And according to Representative O'Neill, she would like to have this carried forward to gather additional information.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that clarity. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We'll now ask Secretary of State, Senator Bellows, next on the list to testify in support. Good afternoon, Madam Secretary.
Emily Cook is filling in for Shana.
Oh, okay.
And I just found out.
All right, thank
Surprise.
you. Emily, you're welcome. Glad you could be with us.
Thank you. Sorry for the last minute change. Secretary Bellows was hoping that her schedule would allow her to be here today. And unfortunately, we weren't able to make that possible. So I'm Emily Cook, Special Assistant to the Secretary of State, standing in for Secretary Bellows today. And we are here speaking in favor of LD 899. Data privacy has been a long-term concern and area of interest for the Secretary. And as Secretary, it is one of her highest priorities. It is in that spirit that we asked the committee to table the bill today and request that it be carried over into the second regular session. Over the next several months, we plan to work with the bill's sponsor, our staff at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles, including a new Chief Information Officer who will be joining the department in the coming weeks, and other data privacy experts to assess where we are on data privacy, what improvements need to be made, and which of those improvements will require legislation. This isn't a process that should be rushed, which is why we are asking for the time to do this correctly. We look forward to presenting you all with this information, including any proposed bill language, in time for the second regular session. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Cook, for that. We appreciate it. Just as a note, you might share with the secretary that we won't need to table this today. Simply when it comes to work session, we will certainly consider her request.
Right.
They'll be carried over. So thank you for that. Are there questions from the committee? See none. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
That was the only registered person to testify on this bill in any way. So we'll now close the public hearing on LD 899. We're now going to open a public hearing on LD 689, an act to allow trucks to use the leftmost lane of a 3-lane interstate highway to safely accommodate entering and exiting vehicles, presented by Representative Kinney of Knox. Good afternoon, Representative Kinney, and welcome.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Senator Diamond and Representative Danny Martin and members of the Transportation Committee. I noticed also that Senator Farren and I both seem to be sitting in our cars today. It seems to be something that happens to those of us that also serve on VLA a little often. I am Mary Ann Kinney and I represent House District 99, which includes the towns of Brooks, Burnham, Freedom, Jackson, Knox, Monroe, Thorndike, Troy, and Unity. And I am here to present LD 689, an act to allow trucks to use the leftmost lane of a 3-lane interstate highway to safely accommodate entering and exiting vehicles. I was asked to submit this bill for a constituent and friend of mine who's been a professional truck driver for close to 30 years. As a professional truck driver myself, I was more than happy to submit this bill. Currently, when driving along the southernmost part of the main turnpike from mile marker 44 to the New Hampshire border, and from the New Hampshire border north to mile marker 44, trucks are prohibited from the left lane due to a sign placed pursuant to Title 21A, Maine Revised Statutes, Section 2052, subsection 5A, which states that a person may not disobey the restrictions stated on these signs. When the 3rd lane was built along this portion of Maine's turnpike, trucks were prohibited not for safety, but for ecological reasons regarding emissions. I drive a 6-cylinder SUV that when I'm able to maintain my speed without constant pressure on the fuel pedal, it goes into eco mode. My SUV will actually shut down up to 4 cylinders as I'm traveling in order to reduce emissions and save fuel economy. Although the big rigs are not shutting down parts of the engine in the same way as my SUV, as they maintain a constant speed, they are more economical with their emissions. When these trucks are forced to remain in the middle and right-hand lanes, and I'm sure Representative Seaver is going to let us know which lane is 1, 2, and 3, but for my purposes, the left lane is closest to the median and the right lane is the closest to the exit and on-ramps. They also are using more fuel and emit more exhaust into the air when slowing down and speeding up as traffic allows. The Maine State Police submitted testimony that trucks are allowed to pass in the left lane, but statutorily, that is incorrect. They may be letting trucks slide as long as they return to the middle lane in a timely fashion, but they could nab the truck driver if they wanted to and would have the law on their side. I also want to add that I have the utmost respect for our law enforcement officers, and I mean no disrespect with that last statement. It's just an observation of statute. I hear a great deal from those in opposition to this bill citing safety concerns. As a professional 18-wheeler myself, I want to point out that the professional truck driver is not a dangerous operator on Maine's highways. These are professionals who drive more miles in a year than most of you will drive in your entire lives. They're working when on our highways to ensure that you have the goods you choose to buy for your daily lives, from clothing to food to the recently scarce toilet paper you purchase from store shelves. I remember an adorable poster at a shipping warehouse when I was over the road with a picture of a cute little toddler sitting up with the caption that read, "About the only thing not delivered by truck." Although I have to wonder if even a baby may have been at some time delivered in a truck on our nation's highways. I understand the concerns from the Maine State Police involving no-zone wraps where 2 tractor trailers could sandwich a passenger vehicle in the center lane. But I also noticed that in their testimony, they mentioned that LD 228, which would have allowed travel in a center lane of a restricted highway, received a unanimous ought not to pass from this committee on March 10th. Therefore, the issue of sandwiching should not occur because all passenger vehicles follow all the rules of the road at all times and would not be traveling in the center lane. Unfortunately, we all know that last statement is a farce because in the testimony for LD 228, the sponsor mentioned that most people think this is already allowed and is why so many do this. I want to point out the other big safety concern from the Maine State Police regarding the guardrails in the center not being able to stop a potentially 80,000-pound truck as they're only rated for a 30,000-pound vehicle. Again, the safety concern is confusing at best. Momentum from a potential accident involving a truck in, say, the center lane, heading across the left lane and into or across the median is greater by simple physics, although my son's current physics class is actually anything but simple. versus if that same truck had been in the left lane to begin with. A loaded truck will actually stop sooner than an empty one. That was one of the first things that I learned when studying for my CDL over 21 years ago. I also have my tanker endorsement, which has their own set of safety issues. A loaded tanker would have less surge, which is the liquid pushing the truck forward as it's trying to stop, versus one that's only partially full. Most tankers today have baffles within the tanker trailer to reduce the force from the surge, but I would caution you all to be careful around milk tank trucks, as those do not have baffles for food safety reasons. And that issue is near and dear to me, living in one of only 3 towns in Maine where cows outnumber people. And I'm sorry, I just had to put that in there. Although I would like to see the restriction removed for trucks in the left lane, I know how much safer it can be for a truck traveling through city areas like Bangor or Portland, where exits are one right on top of each other, if they were able to travel in the left-hand lanes. I actually had an experience one time in Bangor, and I realized that that's a 2-lane highway up there, but I had my CB radio with me, and I was letting a trucker know that he had cleared my vehicle and could return to the right-hand lane safely and without hitting me or other vehicles. And his response was quite telling. He responded that he was going to stay right in that left-hand lane and travel through Bangor, where the exits are one right after another in a short 5-mile stretch, because he was headed further north. And I remember thinking at the time that made perfect sense to me as a truck driver because of that simple act. I've driven in my passenger vehicle in that area before and almost had people run me on or off that interstate as they're entering and exiting because they don't follow the yield signs for entering the interstate. At the very least, I'd like to see us amend either subsection 5A, or I suppose it's more amending what the signs say on the interstate that read that trucks may use the left lane to pass. Most of the drivers I encounter would like to have the law on their side if they need to pass a passenger vehicle that chooses to hang out in that center lane, disobeying the current laws that would prevent the truck from needing the left lane in the first place. Offering something like trucks, as I said, trucks may use the left lane to pass. Trucks are prohibited from the left lane except to pass, maybe would be what would help there, so that the part in subsection 5A that says a person may not disobey the restrictions stated on these signs would be something that would be helpful. And I thank you for your time and consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have to the best of my ability.
Thank you very much, Representative, for that testimony. We appreciate it. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Senator.
Next testifying as a proponent is Mr. Tim Doyle. Good afternoon. Welcome, Mr. Doyle.
Good afternoon, Senator. Representative Martin, members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Tim Doyle, and I'm the Vice President of Maine Motor Transport Association. The association is comprised of almost 1,600 member companies whose employees comprise a large portion of the 33,000 people that make their living in the trucking industry. I am here today to testify in favor of LD 689. The Maine Motor Transport Association is a membership-based association that exists for many reasons. One of the primary purposes of our association is to promote highway safety. As partners in highway safety, we value our relationships with other organizations such as the Maine State Police and the Maine Turnpike Authority, who are also here today to testify. Occasionally, we offer differing viewpoints in our testimony, and this bill is one of those issues where we may have differing viewpoints. LD 689 seeks to allow trucks, as defined in Title 29, subsection 101, to utilize the leftmost lane south of mile marker 44, which is the 3-lane portion of the turnpike. Currently, use of the 3rd lane by trucks is prohibited by turnpike rule. Maine law in Title 29, 2052 also requires all vehicles traveling on divided highways in which the speed is greater than 65 miles an hour or 65 miles an hour or more to use only the rightmost lane except when passing. That's not the rule that's at play here today. As I testified in a related bill earlier in the session, traffic on the interstate highway is safest when traveling in the same direction and at relatively the same rate of speed and without driver distractions. We believe the purpose of Representative Kinney's bill is to allow trucks to utilize the third lane in areas where on and off ramps are present in order to allow for the free flow of merging traffic. I have spoken with several CDL drivers who believe that allowing trucks to utilize the leftmost lane would aid in safety on the turnpike, especially in areas around on and off ramps. By way of background, trucks were first prohibited from the leftmost lane in May of 2004 when portions of the main turnpike were widened to 3 lanes. The stated reason for not allowing trucks to use the third lane was to receive air quality credits to fulfill mitigation requirements of the State Transportation Improvement Plan. The rule adopted by the Turnpike Authority that prohibits trucks reads as follows. In order to improve the air quality in southern Maine, trucks, including truck tractors, but excluding pickup trucks, all defined in 29 MRSA subsection 101, may only operate in the 2 farthest right-hand lanes on any section of the turnpike south of mile marker 44 that consists of 3 lanes in each direction. It is our understanding that the state of Maine has now reached attainment and the air quality issue is no longer relevant to the prohibition of trucks in the third lane. So the issue now is safety. I have discussed the bill with the Turnpike Authority and with the Maine State Police, and we do not quarrel with their safety concerns that they raise in opposition to the bill. Each of the points they make are valid and worthy of consideration. We have also sought to review relevant studies regarding safety improvements when restricting trucks from the third lane. While there are studies available, we did not find the data to be persuasive enough to oppose the idea of allowing trucks to use the third lane. For example, while a Texas study performed in Houston did note a significant reduction in crashes over a 36-week period, a Virginia study only found reduction of crashes in the first year of the study, but showed increase in crashes in the second year. A Palm Beach, Florida study in 1999, where trucks are restricted from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., found significant decrease in truck crashes, but an increased truck and non-truck interaction while entering and exit the highway, as well as a decrease in visibility of traffic signs for motorists. Every area is unique, and Maine cannot solely rely on studies in Houston, Florida, or Virginia, as our traffic congestion and volumes are different than theirs. Truck drivers are professional and they understand safety issues such as the blind spot on trucks. We believe that limited use of the third lane can be allowed without creating substantial risk to highway safety. It is our contention that allowing trucks to utilize the third lane and return to the right lane as required of all vehicles will not create a safety hazard that warrants continued prohibition of trucks as now required. Further, it is our hope that when the widening is completed north of mile marker 44 on the turnpike, that the current rule would not be expanded to restrict trucks from the third lane. Thank you, and I'd be pleased to answer any questions now or at the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle, for that. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Oops, hold on. I think Representative Martin, Tom Martin, did you have a question? No, okay.
Representative Perry does.
Representative Wayne Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Doyle, welcome to the committee. Just one quick question. Don't most states now restrict the leftmost lanes on 3 and 4 lane highways? It seems though I remember when I had my trucking days going to New Jersey, virtually every state from here to there had some restriction about traveling the third lane.
I think there are a number of states that do. I think the number is in the mid-20s. And some of those restrictions, as I read them, involve restrictions of all vehicles from the third lane. So, for example, on the main turnpike, cars are restricted from the third lane, except when passing, and have to return immediately to the right lane. So you are correct that a number of states do. We just don't find any conclusive relevant data to warrant these continued restrictions.
Follow up, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir.
Could you see an issue for us here in Maine in the wintertime during snowstorms and stuff with the trailers traveling in that third lane?
Well, I don't know what you mean exactly by an issue with trucks traveling in the third lane. I think when trucks are traveling at the same rate of speed as cars, and they're able to use the third lane to assist with vehicles entering from on-ramps, I believe it can be done safely. And from the drivers I talked to, they believe it can be done safely as well. You'll hear from the state police, we did chat, as well as the Turnpike Authority, that there are issues that need to be considered. And that's fair, and we're happy to engage in conversation about them and whether or not this can be done safely. We share the road, and we want to use the road safely with all of our partners.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions from the committee? Mr. Doyle, just quickly, maybe for the work session, you might be ready to talk about if we're doing this for the exit and entrances to the three-lane highway. I mean, would that be a difficulty in determining how far out, and for the state police to consider how far away from the entrance or the exit when this would apply? Or do you have, if you don't have any answers, that's fine now, but maybe be ready at the work session to talk about that.
I do. I will be prepared. I think that it would be our intent to use the third lane as all vehicles can, not restrict them. I do think it would be confusing to limit it to within a mile or 2 miles of the on and off ramp, but that's something that we can discuss with the Turnpike Authority and the state police as well.
Thank you for that. I appreciate it. No other questions from the committee? Say none. Thank you, sir. There are no other people speaking as proponents. We'll go to the opponents, and we will welcome Aaron Hayden, the Maine State Police. Good afternoon, sir, and welcome.
Good afternoon, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. My name is Lieutenant Aaron Hayden, and I am the commanding officer of the State Police Commercial Vehicle Unit. I am here today to testify on behalf of the Department of Public Safety and the Maine State Police against LD 689. The bill being presented today pertains to the operation of commercial vehicles on Maine's Turnpike. This bill would allow trucks with a registered gross vehicle weight over 10,000 pounds, including truck tractors, to operate from the Maine-New Hampshire border to mile 44 in the leftmost lane. This is where there is at least 3 lanes in each direction. Tractor trailer units and other trucks over 10,000 pounds are statutorily prohibited from driving in the left lane and therefore only allowed to use the center lanes for passing. If this bill would pass and be added to 29A, section 2052, it would be in conflict with the current law listed in Title 23, section 1980(1)A. The issue of traveling in the center lane was already taken up with LD 228, with the Transportation Committee voting unanimously ought not to pass. The Maine State Police would have significant safety concerns that commercial vehicle units could now traverse 3 lanes of travel, but are still required to return statutorily back to the rightmost lane. There are also numerous safety concerns if this bill were to pass. In current rule, the prohibition of commercial vehicles in the far left lane prevents the no zone wraps, where 2 tractor trailers units sandwich a passenger vehicle between lanes. It positions the largest vehicle out of the highest speed lanes and reduces passenger cars from being boxed in by commercial vehicles, and reduces passenger vehicles that can end up in the commercial vehicle's large right side blind spot area. There is also a safety concern with the proximity of the opposing lane. The current guardrail system uses the NCHRP 350 compliant guardrail system, which is tested to withstand angled impacts from 30,000 pound vehicles. We know that some commercial vehicles weigh far in excess of 30,000 pounds. We have had commercial vehicles units enter into the opposing lane historically during a crash. They normally were already in a deceleration event caused by an accident starting in the furthest right or center lanes. If the event were to occur closer to the left lane, it could lead to an increase in lane crossover. There's also the issue of breakdowns. If a mechanical breakdown were to occur in the far left lane, the current breakdown lanes do not provide adequate spacing for larger commercial vehicles. The vehicles would have to traverse all the way back to the right and try to get into the breakdown lanes that were made for them. The language in this bill authorizes trucks and truck tractors to operate in the leftmost lane only as necessary to safely accommodate entering and exiting vehicles. This would certainly create confusion among law enforcement, as there aren't any ramps on the left side of the turnpike. It could create a subjective rationale for the operator to continue to stay in the leftmost lane if they believe it was necessary to safely accommodate ramp traffic. In other words, this bill is not really enforceable as written. Studies completed in Texas, Florida, and Georgia support the above-mentioned concerns, and states that have limited the far left lane to commercial vehicle have shown a decrease in accidents. Currently, Massachusetts, Connecticut share similar statutes to the state of Maine. On behalf of the Department of Public Safety and the Maine State Police, I thank you for your time. We'd be happy to try to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Lieutenant Hayden, for that. We appreciate that testimony for sure. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next speaking in opposition is the Director of the Maine Turnpike Authority, Mr. Peter Mills. Good afternoon, Mr. Mills. Welcome.
Yes, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Transportation Committee. Before the hearing, I sent off to Sam the results of some surveys and research that we had asked one of our engineering consultants to perform, and there's a very good 3-page email from an engineer named Tim Cody who works for HNTB, and he summarizes a good many of the concerns and the findings. He did a really remarkable thing. He surveyed a number of his peers in other states and got back a lot of information. And I sent a fair amount of it, and I didn't send all of it, but I sent a fair amount of it off to Sam for your consideration. And there's commentary on both sides, but I think the balance of the information is that there is a safety improvement when larger vehicles, 100,000-pound vehicles, 80,000-pound vehicles are not permitted to occupy the left lane in a 3-lane situation. There's a host of reasons, but a lot of it has to do with weaving and the blind side on the right side of a truck, and the fact that the guardrail that we have for that 30-mile stretch from actually it's 44 miles from the bridge abutment in Kittery all the way to Scarborough. That since I've been here for 10 years, I have seen accidents where trailer trucks have managed to get through the guardrail and in fatal accident situations. And you're better off if the trailer truck doesn't get a head start by being in the left lane to begin with to get through that guardrail. It's true that the rule started as a condition of the environmental permitting for the widening, and it had to do with air quality in the first instance, because it was thought by the regulators, the Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the others that were reviewing the permit application, that restricting heavy trucks from the left lane would have a favorable impact on air quality and allowing the state of Maine to achieve attainment. And now that the state has achieved attainment for a host of other reasons, it's not a requirement of the regulatory agencies, but there is an air quality benefit for having large diesel trucks operating at a slightly reduced or steady speed, as would be typical of running in lanes 2 and 3, the center lane and the right-hand lane. There is of those states that do consider the issue, there are a number of them that have restricted trucks from the left-hand lane. And there are some who do not have a rule, but for those who do have a rule, it is usually the rule that you are prohibited from using the left-hand lane. There is overwhelming support for the rule from ordinary motor vehicle operators, from people who travel in cars. When there are surveys done, you'll see from the literature that I've given you that this is a widely accepted, widely favored rule by those who were interviewed, who are passenger car drivers or small truck drivers. That covers most of the things that I wanted to put a highlight onto. There's no end of research that has been done on this issue, and you will find that Sam has access to a fair amount of it if you have further questions. But I think I've pretty well highlighted what I wanted to touch on, and I thought the state police testimony also captured most of those points as well.
Thank you, Mr. Executive Director. We appreciate that. And Sam has that, so the committee members can all have access to that.
That's correct.
Shortly, for sure. Questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Sir.
That concludes our testimony in opposition. There's nobody registered for neither for nor against, so we'll close the public hearing on LD 689. We'll now open the public hearing on LD 796, an act to restrict sales of catalytic converters removed from motor vehicles, presented by Senator Timberlake of Androscoggin. Good afternoon, Senator Timberlake, and welcome.
He's still trying to get on.
Oh, okay.
There he is.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Senator. How are you?
Doing well. I went and put a new shirt on just for you today.
Wow, you look very
Good
nice.
afternoon. I was out on the chopping brush a few minutes ago.
Well, you look fine, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you, Senator. Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. I am Jeff Timberlake. I represent Senate District 22, which includes the towns of Durham, Greene, Leeds, and Lisbon, Litchfield, Sabattis, Turner, Wales, and Wayne. It is my pleasure to be here and present LD 796, an act to restrict sales of catalytic converters removed from motor vehicles. To put it simply, a catalytic converter is an exhaust emission control device that changes harmful substances in a car's exhaust gases, such as carbon monoxide, into a less harmful substance like carbon dioxide and water vapor by means of chemical reaction. Over the last decade or so, the theft of catalytic converters has been on the rise. Thieves brazenly and quickly get under a vehicle, take a battery-powered Sawzall and 2 quick cuts. They remove the converters and sell them, getting a very pretty penny, as the price of precious metals have been rising steadily. This is where I deviate from my testimony for a minute. I'm going to tell you a short story about why I'm so passionate about this. This is at my own family farm here in Turner. We had 4 vehicles, had catalytic converters cut off in one night. It cost us about $2,000 to fix that problem. And then my family owns Northland Plaza in Turner. And one night a lady parked her car at 9:30 in front of my hardware store, and we had cameras. And about an hour later, a young gentleman jumped out of a Datsun car. We ain't heard one of them for a while. Crawled under the car, cut the catalytic converter off, and was gone in less than 7 minutes. And she come back about 11 o'clock, and it cost her about $1,100 before she was done. At CMMC in Lewiston over the last year in the parking garage, there has been over 10 catalytic converters cut off cars there. This, folks, is becoming a very costly, and it's becoming a problem for the citizens of the state of Maine. The cost to the victims and our insurance companies is enormous. Several $1,000s depending on where the thieves strike, from residential driveways to business lots with numerous vehicles. This crime is is becoming more and more popular, unfortunately. One of the most discouraging aspects, however, is that charging the perpetrator is extremely difficult because there is no way to identify a catalytic converter. One suggestion of deterrence is marking the converters. Having a unique marking such as a serial number will help the law enforcement identify a stolen converter. Another recommendations is to require the seller to have a title to the vehicle where the converters came from. I am offering these things as starting points for the committee. Some of the other things that I have thought about as I look at this, that when the seller goes to the junkyard to present it, the seller has to present his driver's license, and the buyer must take a copy of the driver's license along with a photo of the converter that he's bringing in. You know, today's with the phones that we got today, it's pretty easy to take a picture of everything we got and keep it in our records. Also, to make the crime a felony, because no one wants a felony on their record, and that's more of a deterrent for these folks. I am confident you will hear other ideas from experts in the field, and I'm fully amendable to having the language amended. It's certainly welcome. In working with the Auto Recyclers Association, the International Association of Auto Theft Investigators, law enforcement, and others, I'm sure you'll be able to finalize an appropriate language that will deter and combat catalytic converter theft. That's about all I got. I just know it's becoming a bigger and bigger problem every single day. And you can't just go down and put them on or put a straight pipe on because the car and the computers don't run right. And we need to do something to help the citizens curb this problem. Thank you.
Thank you,
Try
Senator.
to answer questions.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Senator Timberlake. Appreciate that testimony. Thank you very much. The questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We look forward to having you. Please stay with us if you'd like, and we look forward to seeing you in work session. The next person who registered to speak, there are no proponents. The next to speak is an opponent, Darrell Brown Jr. from the Maine Auto Recyclers Association. And I would note that there are several people all speaking in opposition, so I would just restate at the beginning of the hearing, please, we want to hear everything you have to say, but if somebody else has already said it, just simply note that, because we all take copious notes and we want to make sure everybody has a chance to speak. So we would now welcome Mr. Brown. Good afternoon.
Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, distinguished members of the Transportation Committee, thank you for having me. I'm Darrell Brown Jr. I live in Hollowell, co-owner of Brown's Exit 27 Salvage and Gardner, and also a member of the Maine Auto Recyclers Association. Appreciate you taking the time to have me speak today, allow me to, and hope to make a better law to help solve the problem of converter thefts. But in my opinion, LD 796 as written does not stop the problem. I believe the state of Maine and in the future, the US government needs to license the buyers of these scrap catalytic converters. Right now, there's no rule in place to regulate who can become a dealer of a scrap catalytic converter. So there's no little, if any, accountability. This creates an opportunity for some morally challenged people to jump into business at the drop of the hat or whenever the price might rise, which right now is when the price is rising. Anyone can claim that they're a buyer. If you monitor social media such as Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist, you can easily find somebody willing to buy your catalytic converter. Of course, a lot of these people are honest and just trying to make a living, but there are people that fly under the radar, meaning they don't have a business name, no known address, etc. This type of buyer doesn't consider how the converter was obtained by the seller. They're just thinking of making a quick buck. Often the converter theft problem goes hand in hand with the drug abuse problem that we have. I've heard allegations of people taking a stolen catalytic converter in trade for heroin. Most of the buyers that we encounter, they sell their catalytic converters out of state to a larger dealer or a refinery. This fact makes it near impossible for our local law enforcement to have a chance to even investigate. There are also plenty of out-of-state buyers that come in around trying to buy converters from myself as an auto recycler, garages, etc. We've had them from as far away as New Jersey. The price of the precious metals in the catalytic converters is at an all-time high, so this issue is very concerning right now, and my concern is the same as Mr. Timberlake's. I agree with him 100%. We need a law, but as written, I don't think the law stops anything. I'm concerned with the idea of placing a VIN on each converter only because if these VINs don't go into a database, there's a lot of availability for deception. And if somebody's willing to steal a catalytic converter, they're willing to adjust some numbers, borrow numbers from somewhere else, use a number multiple times, however the case may be. I think we need to come together as a group of concerned citizens and create an enforceable law to curb the problem. It's a great opportunity for our organization, the Maine Auto Recyclers Association, to work with the enforcement agencies and come up with a solution. And thank you for allowing me to comment on this subject, and hopefully we can come up with a better idea.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. So just to be clear, I hope you'll be at our work session, but
If I'm invited, I'll be there.
you're invited. So are you suggesting that maybe the Auto Recyclers Association and any others that may be interested might come in with a suggested amendment to the bill?
I have actually reached out to a couple of the buyers that are more prominent on social media, trying to get their input, which, because in today's time of this Zoom meeting type of thing, I would like to get a bunch of people in a room together and share thoughts, because I don't have the answer, but I know it's out there and I know together. And I'm excited about this because for once, I'm not opposing Maine DOT. I'm not opposing the law enforcement in this one. I'm on the same side as everybody. I don't oppose the law. I oppose the law as written.
Thank you, sir. That'll be helpful to the committee and our work session, knowing that you're out there and willing to put some work into this.
Yeah.
The committee will talk about that and see what the committee decides, but hopefully, I think it's really nice. It's encouraging that you're able to provide some assistance if requested.
If you don't mind, as the Maine Auto Recyclers, as a group, we've been in a bunch of email chains and phone calls back and forth. There's a lot of interest in trying to help solve the problem. The promotion of the value of these has hurt of all of our business. Everybody is becoming a unlicensed salvage dealer. Every used car dealer we talk to now, they know the value of the catalytic converter on their car. Makes it harder for us to all compete. So it is a problem.
Thank you, sir. That's very, very helpful. No other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you. We'll now go to Sandy Blaylock, another Automobile Recyclers Association person. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman Diamond and Chairman Martin and members of the committee. My name is Sandy Blaylock. I'm the Executive Director of the Automotive Recyclers Association. I want to thank you for the opportunity to testify today on LD 796. And we certainly appreciate the thoughtfulness of our position and willingness to have this considered for the work session. And Senator Timberlake, I look forward to continue working with you on this. We are seeing this issue in many states. I can tell you right now, our association is tracking over 40 catalytic converter bills around the country. So we definitely would like to work with you on this. We've been representing the automotive recycling industry since 1943. So we've seen just about everything you could possibly throw at a professional auto recycler in those 77 years. I'm not going to repeat everything. I did send in written testimony, so I'm not going to waste everybody's time today, but ARA is currently serving on the International Association of Auto Theft Investigators Subcommittee on Catalytic Converter Theft. And as Senator Timberlake mentioned, they are working to craft model policy and legislation to give law enforcement the tools they need to combat catalytic converter theft. So far, the committee has produced 6 key points to identify the person selling the converter with certainty, identify the donor vehicle with certainty through marking, and of course that may be some struggles there. Of course, traceable payments for those catalytic converters that are being sold. We need to make sure that all the transaction records from those sales can be accessible to law enforcement. But we also want to be cognizant of the fact that catalytic converters are approved for resale as a part by the EPA, and we want to make sure that we protect that right for auto recyclers to sell catalytic converters as parts. And then and as Senator Timberlake mentioned, boy, if the penalties are not strong enough to deter this activity, it's just kind of a worthless effort to even do it. We've seen in some states where the penalties are not even against the law. They're going to get them an administrative fine. And I can tell you the thieves are not afraid of administrative fines. However, if we can deter them by a felony conviction, and oh, by the way, as Senator Timberlake mentioned, the catalytic converters that are being stolen would definitely, just at the property value of any property stolen, would probably meet the threshold for a felony in the state of Maine. So we recommend that this committee adopt the International Association of Auto Theft Investigators 6 points in the catalytic converter anti-theft legislation. And we look forward to continue our work with you and being a resource for you. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Oops, I just lost you. I've lost my screen. It just went out. Ah, back. Good. Anyway, thank you very much for that. And if the committee decides, it's nice, we appreciate your willingness to work with Senator Timberlake and others. If the committee decided to carry the bill over, that would give you ample time to do some good work on this. So certainly I'm sure that'll come up. Questions from the committee? Yes, Representative Perry.
Yeah, just real quick, Mr. Senator. That's exactly what I was thinking, is maybe it really sounds like this just needs a little bit of time. And, we can hear from the other people and at work session kind of see if that's the best route to go, is maybe carried over and give, because it sounds like everybody's working together already. I don't think we need to have anything special, just give them some extra time. So we can talk about that during work session, but I wanted to bring that up. I agreed with what you just said.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you, Ms. Blaylock, for that, for being here in that testimony. Now we'll hear from another opposition, Bill Bell, Maine Auto Recyclers Association. Mr. Bell, welcome.
Thank you, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished members of the committee. My name is Bill Bell. I reside in Saco, Maine, and I am the executive director of the Maine Auto Recyclers Association. And we greatly appreciate Senator Timberlake bringing this problem to the forefront. We, for procedural reasons, need to be on record as opposing the bill as drafted in the printed legislation, but we look forward to working with a good senator who has already expressed some of the ideas that we have been working on. And let me just make a couple of brief points. You have in the written testimony a piece of kind of draft legislation that we worked on both with Ms. Blaylock and our national headquarters and input from our association. That could obviously be perhaps a starting point. And I want to make the point that our auto recyclers are licensed, and there's about 300 auto recyclers in the United States. I mean, in Maine, they are licensed locally, and then both Bureau of Motor Vehicles and Maine DEP regulate the licensed recyclers. Of this 300, approximately 50 of our members. A lot of the recyclers are very small. It's just, a family used car business, and they keep a recycler's license just because they occasionally, once or twice, 5 times a year, take a car apart. But we also have very large members who recycle dozens of vehicles a day. And the bill as drafted went to the core of what we do, which is we take cars apart and resell parts. And obviously the catalytic converter is a very important and one of the few things that are profitable resale, which unfortunately the thieves have also recognized in this. So we look forward to working with you all, and if I may compete with the distinguished Senate Chair as a historian here, back in 2012, the legislature dealt, and it was the then LCRED or Business Committee, dealt with very similar legislation, which became Public Law Chapter 545. And it was an act to prevent the theft and illegal sale of copper and other materials. And this was passed as an emergency. And in the preamble to that, it specifically cited catalytic converters as a very valuable item that was being stolen. And a lot of people worked very hard on this bill. And the problem became one of law enforcement, whether they had the resources to enforce it. So the bill did a couple of things, did wind up doing a couple of things, one of which, as Senator Timberlake has also referenced, is requiring the maintenance of records, a copy of the driver's license when someone sells a valuable piece of metal, and checking the, having a photo ID of the check, and maybe, let me just say, those deterrents in that law, current law, obviously aren't sufficient. And so maybe we can, as a starting point, just say, okay, this was the law, but how do we make it better? And obviously, although it's not a joyous thing for our folks to be doing, but the key thing is to be putting the VIN number or some means of identification on the catalytic converter, because as has already been said, without being able to do a trace back, you basically don't have much to work with. Thank you for your time and welcome questions now or at the work session.
Thank you, Mr. Bell, and it's nice to see you again. We're pleased to have you here. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. We'll now, another person speaking in opposition, Andreas Heiss. Andreas? Yes, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, you did, Chairman. Thank you so much. Chairman Diamond, Chairman Martin, distinguished members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Andreas Heiss, and I am the Northeast Manager of Government Affairs for LKQ Corporation. Just so you have an idea, we have 4 facilities in Maine, 1 in Bangor, 1 in Gardner, Gorham, and Westbrook. We have 460 facilities in 44 states, and we are the largest vehicle recycler in the country. Just to put that in perspective, we recycled over 800,000 cars last year. So that's almost 800,000 catalytic converters that we need to somehow have somewhere to put them. So I've been working closely with Sandy's organization, ARA, and with Bill and Daryl on the language. We've been in good communication. I'd like to thank Senator Timberlake to be open to our ideas. And, you know, this isn't, like Sandy said, this isn't a Maine problem. This is everywhere. And us having so many facilities in so many different states, we've seen it all. There's crazy laws out there concerning catalytic converters. Vermont says you can't transport them during after business hours and things. You know, we're working on this type of stuff everywhere. And I'm pretty confident from what I've heard today that, you know, we can, in the work groups and moving forward, we can come to a solution for everybody and come up with the best possible way to, you know, make Senator Timberlake happy and make the committee also happy and do the best thing for Maine. So I'm not going to repeat any of the other things everyone else has said, and I look forward to working with the committee in the future in the next few weeks. So that'd be great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you being here. And the testimony, we look forward to having you with work session if you're able to be.
Yes, I'd like that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Before we go to the next testifier, Darlene, would you make sure that if you can make a call to Senator Doherty and tell her we're almost ready for her so that she would be available. Next, testifying in opposition is Kirby Littlefield. Good afternoon. Kirby.
Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, distinguished members of Transportation Committee. My name is Kirby Littlefield. I own Littlefield's late model used parts and deck command.
Mr. Littlefield, excuse
Yeah.
me. Would you mind holding the paper down away from the mic because it's a little muffled and we're having a little bit of difficulty?
I'm past president of the Maine Auto Recyclers Association, and I'm on the executive board of our association. I'm not going to reiterate what everybody else has said. We all know that the way the bill is submitted is not going to help very much. We'd like to work with the committee, as an association, and myself. We worked with them before on the proper deal. And I'm sure, along with the National Association, we can come up with some great ideas in order to try to stop this theft. But it does go right back to enforcement. And it also goes back to the people that are buying the converters. It's not the ones that are selling it, it's the ones that are buying. That's the only thing I've got to say today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Littlefield. We appreciate you being here with us. Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Last person speaking in opposition is Bruce Garrity. Good afternoon, Mr. Garrity.
Good afternoon, Senator. Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, members of the committee. My name is Bruce Garrity. I'm actually testifying for several clients, the Maine Auto Dealers Association, which presented written testimony, the American Property Casualty Insurance Association, the Insurance Auto Auctions, and Schnitzer Steel. I won't repeat what other people have said, but I do think there are a couple of pieces of information the committee might not have. The reason I'm testifying for the American Property Casualty Insurance Association is that they reach arrangements with different entities that recycle and crush cars. And what happens when a vehicle is totaled in the state of Maine, something has to be done with it. The person whose vehicle was totaled gets paid what they're owed under the policy. The insurance company has the car, and it's in their interest to expeditiously deal with it. That includes selling it to those who part it out, those who crush it. And to the extent that this would inhibit the ability of that whole system to work effectively, and the people who deal with these are called insurance salvage pools. They're defined under Title 29. That has the potential to make insurance more expensive. This is not to say we don't want this issue dealt with effectively. I won't repeat what people said about the statutes on point. The committee can review them. I believe they were Mr. Brown's testimony. We certainly agree with Senator Timberlake that this is a serious problem and needs a serious solution. What I would urge the committee to consider is carrying this bill over and turning it into a formal study rather than informally asking parties to get together. I do think that with both committees' guidance and the efforts of everyone involved, you can consider solutions that would be both enduring and help everyone in the industry. And with that, I'd be happy to try and answer any questions the committee might have, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Garrity, for that testimony. We appreciate it. Representative Danny Martin has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Garrity, and to others who have spoken in opposition to this bill, it's my understanding there appears to be some interest in doing something right. With that in mind, just an FYI, we're scheduled to work on this bill next Tuesday. So if in fact you folks are planning on getting together and coordinating something and coming up with a reasonable amendment, you've got a short period of time. And I just wanted to share that with you as an FYI.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that, Representative Martin. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none. That's the last person testifying in opposition. One last testifier, neither for nor against, is Justin Short. Good afternoon and welcome, Mr. Short.
Thank you, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. My name is Justin Short, and I'm residing in Glenmont, Maryland, outside of Washington, D.C., but as the Manager of Government Relations for the Institute of Scrap Recycling Industries, I've been asked to speak on behalf of our New England chapter members. So thank you for the opportunity to provide input on LD 796 today. And ISRI members in Maine would like to work with Senator Timberlake to achieve the goals of LD 796 without harming recyclers that are operating responsibly under Maine's existing metals theft statutes. And just for some background, ISRI is the national trade association that serves as the voice of the recycling industry. We have 20 regional chapters, including the New England chapter, representing our Maryland members in Maine. We process, broker, and manufacture essential recyclable commodities into raw materials for the nation's critical manufacturing and infrastructure needs. There are 67 ISRI member companies in the chapter, and Mr. Diamond or Garrity spoke earlier on their position on that. And nationally, ISRI is monitoring these issues and trends. This is partly why I am here today, as my job at ISRI is to know what the states are doing on this subject. ISRI is currently monitoring 43 different pending bills in 20 states on this issue. And in all cases, as previous speakers have mentioned, one thing is certain: there is no doubt that the market for stolen catalytic converters is fueled by illegal buyers claiming that they are not subject to state metal theft laws because they purchase parts and not scrap metal. However, catalytic converters that have been detached and sold separately from a vehicle are very rarely sold for reuse as parts and are not core parts like a transmission or engine. The devices that are detached from scrap metal vehicles for the recycling of valuable non-ferrous metals, and any purchaser of a detached catalytic converter that is sold separately in Maine should be following the existing scrap metal processor requirements and should not be allowed to evade metal theft laws. Otherwise, the black market will flourish with no records to be found. Responsible Maine scrap metal processors are part of the solution. We serve as partners with law enforcement in Maine by providing invaluable records on scrap sales. And on behalf of the Maine's recycling industry, we'd like to thank you for your attention and look forward to further discussions with the committee, Senator Timberlake, and other stakeholders to further the goals of LD 796 and strengthen Maine's metal theft laws. Happy to answer any questions from the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Short, and thank you for being with us today. We appreciate having you. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. That then concludes testimony on LD 796. And we will have a chance during, you're all invited to work session, obviously, and it looks like we've got some direction on that, and the committee will consider where we'll go from here. But obviously, there's a lot of folks that want to chip in and help, and we appreciate all of that. We'll close the public hearing on LD 796. Our last bill today to be heard is LD 821, an act to improve the investigation and prosecution of cases that involve vulnerable road users, presented by Senator Doherty of Cumberland. Good afternoon and welcome, Senator Doherty.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished colleagues of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. Can everyone hear me okay? My mic was giving me some trouble earlier.
Yeah, you're fine.
Perfect. So my name is Maddie Daughtry, and I'm the state senator for Senate District 24, which includes the towns of Brunswick, Freeport, Harpswell, North Yarmouth, and Pownell. And I'm pleased to be here this afternoon to present LD 821, an act to improve the investigation and prosecution of cases that involve vulnerable road users. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, we have been seeing what many people are referring to as the bike boom. In fact, some of you may relate to this to yourselves. All across the world in Maine, we're seeing a dramatic increase not only in bike usage, whether it's a public transportation alternative for its health benefits or simply to just get outside. As an avid rider myself, I've been so excited to see many more people getting into the sport. And also we've been seeing an increase in folks taking advantage of our public lands, jogging, doing all types of different activities that are bringing more people outside and more people onto our roadways. However, we know that cycling and other activities is not risk-free. We've done great work here in Maine to make sure that vulnerable users or persons on a public way who are more vulnerable to injury than a person in a motor vehicle can participate in these activities in the public way with a reasonable expectation of safety. Bills like these support a wide variety of activities, whether it's something like roller skating or walking, horseback riding, snowmobiling, biking, and more. These laws support all vulnerable users and drivers by making sure that expectations are clear. LD 821 is an extension of our progress on this. This bill requires a law enforcement officer who investigates a reportable accident or allegation involving a vulnerable user to inform the relevant district attorney about the investigation and any evidence relevant to the potential prosecution of an alleged criminal violation resulting from the investigation within 60 days of the accident. After conversations with various stakeholders, you will see that I am also proposing an amendment to change this language from 60 days to 5 days, and it is attached with my testimony. Adding this language to statute is important for a variety of reasons. For one, after a crash involving a vulnerable user, the vulnerable user or operator of the vehicle may experience a state of shock, head injuries, or even death. And it's important for us to have built-in supports in these cases to protect the parties involved by facilitating the swift transfer of important information. LD 821 does not require review of these cases or immediate expectations of prosecution right off the bat, just that the crashes are run through multiple systems so that Maine has a uniform and consistent practice in crashes involving vulnerable users. This bill makes sure that nothing is missed in the immediate aftermath of the crashes. Additionally, requiring reports on crashes involving vulnerable users also puts them on the radar of local district attorneys so that they can better develop practices in their counties to address crashes involving vulnerable users. As Maine continues to see an increase in biking and other activities, and unfortunately also an increase in accidents and crashes and just a general, uptick, we need to expand and adapt our laws to protect both vulnerable users and drivers. And I believe that LD 821 allows Maine to remain a safe place for cyclists and everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to present this bill. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I've included my proposed amendments. As I mentioned, there will also be others coming behind me who can also speak about different aspects of the bill as well. And with that, thank you for your consideration and your time.
Thank you, Senator Doherty. We appreciate your testimony. Are there questions from the committee? So for the work session, if we can have a more complete definition of vulnerable user, I think that would be helpful. And maybe some other folks will be testifying today, but if not, Senator, if you could give us a little more guidance on that, I think that would be helpful.
If I can just chime in, if you check the actual language of the bill as well as the amendment, the idea is anyone that's basically, and I would urge everyone to look at that verbiage, which is, far more eloquent. I am not a lawyer, but is anyone who's at, a disadvantage of harm if, coming impact with a car. But I do know that there are others behind me who could speak to that, and I'm happy to bring that to the work session.
Yes, thank you. I had read that section 1, but I didn't have anything else. Thank you very much for that. Next, we have, in terms of a proponent, Wendell Milliken. Good afternoon. Wendell Milliken, are you with us? I think he is.
Well, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Chairman Diamond, Senator Doherty, members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Wendell Milliken, and I'm concerned with the lack of protection for cyclists, pedestrians, and visitors to the state of Maine. I live in Falmouth, and I've been bicycling most of my life. I have been hit on 2 different occasions by drivers and vehicles that weren't paying attention. In both instances, they were taking a right-hand turn and went through me because they didn't have the time to wait. The first accident was in Bel Air, Maryland, where I worked and commuted back and forth in Portland, Maine on a weekly basis. The second accident was on Washington Avenue here in Portland, Maine. The first occasion, I had 2 broken ribs. On the second occasion, I had a broken spirit. I didn't dare to ride my bike in traffic for over a year. My purpose here today is not to discuss the details of getting hit by a car, but to discuss the aftermath of the incidents. In Maryland, the police came to the scene and I was taken away in an ambulance to St. John's Hospital in Baltimore. My clothes were cut off me. I was stitched up and sent on my way basically naked. I had to beg to get a Johnny because when you're biking, you're wearing a pair of bike shorts, a bike shirt, some shoes. Well, they had cut the shirt off and it was late at night. I had my boss have to pick me up at 1 a.m. in the morning, get me back to my hotel. He drove down from Aberdeen, Maryland, dropped me off. But that's when all the questions came out. Where's my wallet? Where's my cell phone? Where's my bike? Where's my helmet? Who pays for the ambulance? Who hit me? Where are my clothes? Where's my rental car? What the hell happened? It's a traumatic event to get hit by a car. Angelo had my phone and my wallet, but no information about the accident. The bike was found at the fire station in Bel Air where the ambulance was dispatched from. The police report was nowhere to be found. I contacted the Bel Air police. They referred me to the state police. The state police referred me to the Franklin County Police, which is in the same building as the Bel Air Police Department. No report, No one was even willing to admit that they had been the officer at the scene. And this is in a state that has progressive laws to protect cyclists. No tickets were issued for failing to observe the right of way or for a moving traffic accident or for anything. I was hit while I was riding in a painted bike lane in a wide open area with good visibility for a half a mile in any direction. I was hit, my insurance company paid the medical bills, but not the replacement of the bike, the clothing, or the lost work time. It took over 6 months for my ribs to heal, and I stopped riding bicycles on my business trips for exercise. The questions still linger today as to why there were no penalties for the driver who just tried to get home 18 seconds faster than if she had stopped and let me continue riding my bike in a bike lane. I was never able to contact the driver because there was no incident report. I could not seek civil penalties or even get an apology, and I could have died. The accident was quite serious. The second time, I was hit by a woman while I was sitting at a red light with about 20 cars ahead of me on Washington Avenue, headed in town. The woman pulled up beside me. When it was her time to proceed, the light had turned red. The cars ahead of her decided to move. She took a right-hand turn directly across me into a driveway. I called the Portland police and they never came. I then called my wife to pick me up. The bike was ruined. I had scrapes and scratches, but to this day, an enduring understanding of how dangerous the interference between cars and people are. I was lucky on both occasions. So responses to the biped crashes suffer from inadequate reporting and investigation in Maine as in other states. Drivers all too often experience no repercussions for their actions behind the wheel. And I don't want that lack of accountability by drivers to continue. People's lives are at risk. LD 821 will help in the aftermath of car accidents like mine. There has to be some remedy for pedestrians and bicyclists who are hit by vehicles. There has to be documentation of an accident that involves a vulnerable person. Because pedestrians and cyclists are vulnerable to 2,000, 5,000 pound vehicles. Distracted driving is real. Every crash requires a police document on the crash scene. So why are pedestrians and bicyclists treated differently, overlooked, and ignored? Nationally, 2% of all vehicle accidents involve vulnerable users. They account for 20% of the fatalities. Today, there are thousands of accidents in which vulnerable individuals are involved in these accidents. And without laws and law enforcement to protect us, we need someone to defend us. So I please ask that you support passage of LD 821. And thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Milliken, for being with us today and sharing your testimony. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, speaking as proponent would be Michael Rifkin. Good afternoon, Mr. Rifkin.
Good afternoon, Senator. Thank you. Good afternoon, members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Michael Rifkin. I'm a resident of Greene. I'm a retired family physician and have practiced family medicine in Lewis and Auburn for 38 years. I'm submitting testimony in support of LD 821, an act to improve the investigation and prosecution of cases that involve vulnerable road users. Vulnerable users, pedestrians, and people who ride bikes are the victims of motor vehicle crashes in our state all too often. These crashes, which are occurring at an increasing frequency, are often preventable and avoidable by changes in motor vehicle operators' behavior. I believe LD 821 can lead to changes that would aid in decreasing these events. I've been an avid cyclist in Maine for over 30 years, since my then 12-year-old daughter invited me to ride my first trek across Maine. I ride through Maine's beautiful countryside near my home, riding about 1,500 miles annually. On May 11th, 2016, I was riding a usual 25-mile loop from home when 6 miles from completion of the ride, I was struck from behind by a car on the North Parish Road in Turner. I had a severe lower extremity injury and suffered a concussion. A 2-week hospitalization, multiple surgeries, and a prolonged period of painful rehabilitation led to a successful and nearly complete functional recovery. I was out of work for 5 months and returned to my work as a family physician on a part-time basis. My family, friends, coworkers, and patients suffered the trauma of my injury with me. The operator of the vehicle immediately admitted at the time of the crash to the sheriff's officer who arrived at the scene that he had not been paying attention. A crash reconstruction determined that the driver, quote, should have had a heightened awareness of the object, the bicyclist, 10 seconds, 733 feet before the crash. And quote, at 4 seconds from impact, 293 feet, the bicyclist would have been clearly identifiable as a bicyclist in the travel lane. An examination of the driver's cell phone revealed he had sent a text message 5 minutes before he called 911 and received 3 more texts prior to the crash, and may have viewed Facebook as well in that time span. The crash report investigators concluded that the operator, quote, would have had more than ample time to detect, identify, and avoid the cyclist, me, if he was being attentive to his vehicle operation and surroundings. No criminal charges were brought against the driver, and he received a citation for breaching the 3-foot rule and had to pay a $105 fine. The legislators of our state have passed many well-thought-out and well-intentioned laws and regulations that protect vulnerable users on Maine's roads and trails. With required district attorney involvement, LD 821 would provide a process that would lead to full investigation of these crashes and potential prosecution of motor vehicle operators who have violated laws and regulations. The expert involvement and input of DAs would create a consistent and well-informed evaluation to determine culpability of the operator. This evaluation would provide a sense of fairness for the victims of these oftentimes life-altering events. I request that the members of the Transportation Committee support this bill. It will ultimately lead to safer roads for pedestrians and people who ride bikes. It will serve to improve investigation and reporting, change driver behavior, have a beneficial impact on victims and families, and serve to hold motor vehicle operators responsible for their actions on the roads. I thank the committee for the opportunity to present this information, and I look forward to your passing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Questions, Representative Danny Martin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Riflin, since you mentioned the office of the district attorney, as the bill is currently written, it says that the district attorney could take any action he desires. Might not it be better, and that's also opposed to good Senator Doherty, to add a penalty clause in there and specify exactly which crime and which level an offense should take care?
Mr. Rifkin?
I'm not a lawyer. I don't know if I can answer that question. I think that the point of the law, as I understand it, would be that it would require a consistent, full investigation through the DA's office, that the investigating officer would present the information, and it would be up to law enforcement or prosecution, the DA, to determine whether a crime had occurred.
Thank you. Yep, go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chair. I guess as a follow-up, all I was suggesting that the sponsor and the committee consider a penalty clause and specify exactly which infraction or violation and what level an offense may be.
Thank you. So noted, and we will look forward to that discussion and work session. Thank you very much. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate you being with us. Next person speaking as a proponent would be Sydney Michael Duck. Good afternoon. Welcome. We have,
No, I've got him in queue, but
I think he might have left.
could be. He's having technicalities.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
we'll certainly come back to him if that's the case.
Okay, I'll pull somebody else in.
Yeah, next one would be on your list.
Mr. Martin, well, Martin,
Yes.
Mr. or Mrs., not sure.
Martin? Yes. Good afternoon. Welcome.
There we go. Hi, I'm Jaja Martin.
Oh, Judge, thank you very much. We apologize. Go ahead.
That's okay. No, I have, I have an unusual name, but thank you. So good afternoon, Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished members of the Transportation Committee. My name is Jaja Martin. I live in Bremen, Maine, and I work in Lincoln County. So I am also a victim of traffic trauma, and I'm here to testify in favor of LD 821. I'll get to my story just in a minute, just really briefly. But first of all, I think it's important for you to know that I'm one of the growing number of taxpayers here in the state of Maine who owns and drives a car, but I actually use my bicycle most days of the year to commute to and from work. I ride 15 miles each way, 5 days a week. My husband and 3 children and I, as well as many members of our community, also enjoy using main roads to bike, jog, and walk and stay physically and mentally active. Someone else has already talked about that. I believe that as Mainers grapple with climate change, congestion, and other environmental problems, we're going to start seeing more people like me using bikes and e-bikes on our roadways to get to and from work and to accomplish their daily activities just for a living. And in addition, as Maine develops and improves its public transportation systems in rural and urban areas, I think we're going to start seeing a lot more people walking and biking on main roadways to and from public transportation hubs. The legislation before you is something I strongly support because it's one of a number of initiatives intended to ensure that special protections are in place when people are walking, riding bikes, and working in and around our roadways. And sometimes when those people are struck by by people driving motor vehicles, it protects them. It will do this by encouraging law enforcement officers in every county of Maine to properly respond to, investigate, and record the details of collisions involving vulnerable road users. It will ensure that district attorneys throughout the state are aware of and have an opportunity to consider prosecuting serious crashes involving vulnerable road users in their regions. And it will promote better data collection of crashes involving vulnerable users and how they are handled in the state of Maine. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit about my story. Last April, less than a year ago, I was riding my bicycle in Round Pond, Maine for exercise, and I was struck from behind and sideswiped by the operator of a large pickup truck who attempted an unsafe pass of me. After the collision, the driver who hit me admitted to me and to others there at the crash site that the collision took place while he was reaching for something within his vehicle. The morning I was hit was a clear morning with good visibility and no traffic at all on the road other than me and the truck. The driver also admitted to seeing me ahead of him on the road several times before the collision. There was a great line of sight there. After the crash, I lay on the road, physically injured, cold, disoriented, and in shock from having just been hit. Giving what had just happened to me and giving Maine's laws that I know about, safe passing law, driving to endanger, distracted driving.
Jesus Christ.
And other laws, I assumed that while I was treated and taken by ambulance to the hospital, that public law enforcement and others responding to the crash would protect me and other members of the public by investigating exactly how and why I was hit. I assumed they would secure evidence, report the case to the district attorney's office, and follow up to ensure that other members of the public were not hurt by the same driver. I assumed there would be consequences for the driver and that law enforcement officers and others would be taking steps to hold the driver accountable. Unfortunately, that was not the case, at least not initially. The week or so after I was released from the hospital and back home, I read about my crash in the local newspaper and learned that the driver was not being ticketed or charged by law enforcement. I have included a copy of that article with my testimony. I tried to find out why nothing was being done from a public safety standpoint to hold the driver who hit me accountable, but I found the legal system to be confusing and difficult to navigate, particularly when I was still physically and emotionally injured from having been hit. I was also busy trying to get medical care, financial assistance, and what I needed from healthcare providers, insurance companies, and all of that. So it was during that time that I learned that it's up to the individual officer at the scene to decide the scope and substance of an investigation involving injury to a vulnerable road user like me. I learned that it's usually a law enforcement officer who gets to decide whether to ticket, charge, or even submit a report of the collision to the DA. In my case, I understand that the law enforcement officer decided that he would reward the driver for not having hit and run because he stopped. The officer did this by not ticketing him or charging him at all. This seemed and still seems very subjective. Here I was suffering from serious bodily injury, and the driver who caused my injuries was being rewarded for not having driven away. Unfortunately, having just been through this traffic trauma, I didn't have the physical or mental strength or legal know-how to advocate for myself. Fortunately, due to my connections and some resources I have available, I was able to secure legal counsel who helped me get the case in front of a DA for review. Once at the DA's office, an attorney with legal training and understanding made an appropriate decision to charge the driver and prosecute the case. But it shouldn't have required these extra steps for a DA to review my case and for me to be treated fairly under the law. While I felt the officer who responded to my crash was kind and considerate, I often think about whether I would have been treated differently had a different law enforcement officer responded. Had I been living in a different county? Had I been a child? Had I been a new Mainer? Or had I been the daughter, wife, or mother of someone the law enforcement officer knew? Would there have been charges? Would there have been a crash report? Would someone have asked what exactly that driver was reaching for when he drove into me? Would a search warrant have been obtained for the driver's phone? Would the officer have consulted with the DA on call or asked for a review of the case? I also wonder how the case would have been handled if I did not speak English as a first language. Had I been unconscious or unable to remember what had happened to me? Frankly, I shouldn't have to ask these questions, nor should anyone else have to ask these questions, particularly when already suffering from traffic trauma. While I recognize the importance of law enforcement discretion, crashes involving walkers, bike riders, and road workers and other vulnerable road users warrant an extra layer of protection and review to ensure that the cases are handled properly and uniformly throughout the state. This extra level of review is appropriate because the vulnerable road users involved in these crashes, like me, are often dead or not in a position to advocate for themselves due to brain injuries, physical injuries, emotional trauma, or other trauma caused by the crash. It's also appropriate because the law enforcement agencies do not regularly handle these types of cases and may not have the same training and know-how to handle them fairly and uniformly. This is particularly so when some officers and their departments are already often strapped for time and resources and may not have the time or ability to perform an appropriate review of the case, or they may get pulled away on another matter. If bicycle, pedestrian, and other vulnerable road user crashes are regularly reported to the DA's offices, it will take the randomness out of the victim experiences and public safety responses to these crashes. It is also anticipated that district attorneys and law enforcement officers will develop more uniform practices for investigating, documenting, and reviewing and prosecuting these cases. In summary, this bill promotes better investigation and handling of vulnerable road user cases, offers increased protections for all road users, improves public safety by alerting authorities at different government institutions to high crash areas and trends in hazardous operational choices, and improves data collection regarding vulnerable road user crashes. It also promotes uniformity in the handling and review of vulnerable road user crashes and ensures that victims of traffic trauma like me can spend time healing and recovering from trauma instead of on asking for a proper review of our cases. I urge you to vote for this bill, and I will try to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Ms. Martin, for the testimony. We appreciate it. Are there questions from the committee? Thank you. Would ask everybody testifying, there's other people to testify, please be as concise as possible. That'll be helpful to the committee. We'll now go to Mr. Sidney Michael Duck, who we had a little technical difficulty. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Senator Diamond and the members of the Transportation Committee. Some background, we moved to Maine 5 years ago, and we did so because of the area, the environment, and the people. Sometimes these situations regarding cyclists, generally the thought is that they're not very good cyclists or they don't pay attention, and to some degree that might be true. In my case, I just thought you should know that at 55 years of age, I was the New England Criterium champion. At 65, I was the California state champion. I was the California Arizona champion for 3 years, and I raced nationally and was on the podium for 5 years in a row in various events. So I know how to ride a bike. I'm very, very serious about being safe, and all of it failed on June 16th of last year. I was stopped at a light at Fort Andros. The light turned green. I went straight ahead, and a person in a pickup truck collided with me, cut across my right of way. Her right rear wheel went up my left side. It compressed my pelvis. It fractured it in multiple places. It created a seroma, which is this large swelling where your skin is basically delaminated from just above my knee to my hip. I had skin removed from my knee to my shoulder. It resulted in 2 operations to date. I had 6 screws put into me ranging from 2 inches to 6 inches. The 6-inch screw backed out, which wouldn't let my right leg move, so they had to put me back in to take the screw out. And through all that, I had no idea what had happened legally or unlegally. We ended up getting legal help and to see what had happened. The police report cited that the operator had ignored the 3-foot rule. She had driven through my right of way and basically almost killed me. And so what I found fascinating about this was that I've been riding bicycles or racing bicycles for 30 years, had been riding a bicycle my whole life. And here I am in the state of Maine, basically a place that touts tourism as a major source of its revenue, and really justifiably a place to come, allows the police department at their own discretion decide whether they should issue a ticket to a person that's clearly, via the police report, broken the law. And in this particular case, the driver was not issued any kind of citation, no ticket. So in essence, she drove home and I was taken to surgery. Now, I have more verbiage in this, but I know you folks are busy. But I have to tell you that this whole experience, I was 74 at the time, has changed my entire life. Just quickly, when I was lying on the road, it was very, very hot. And the noise was just amazing with the sirens and cars and people and just the general confusion. And all of a sudden, all the noise completely stopped. And right in front of me, a rectangular frame showed itself, and a voice asked me if I wanted to die. And it asked me twice. And on the second time, I said no, and I came back to the road. And that has changed me forever in terms of how I ride my bike, how I drive a car, how I walk. The fact that I had to speak to a lawyer to find out why nothing had been done to this driver and be told by the police department that it was up to the DA, that they couldn't do anything. I found myself basically being the bad guy in this whole thing, while the operator had no downside whatsoever. So my life has both physically and emotionally changed. My wife had to give me injections in my legs for 14 days in a row for blood clots. You can imagine the injuries I had from this truck tire going up the side of me. And our legal system has enabled that. So I'm just exhorting you to do something with this law, this LD 821. There simply has to be a record of what drivers do and don't do, how they hurt people or how they don't hurt people, how it's prosecuted or not, and why. The fact, it seems to me now, that all these things go into a black hole, and on the surface, nobody gives a damn. And what's interesting about being an avid cyclist or a hiker or something like that is when you move, like we have, invariably you call somebody you either know, you call the bike shop, you call bike clubs, and you say, geez, what are the roads like? How dangerous is it? What are the police like? What are the local drivers like? Well, what I found is that if the police are not going to support the people out there on their cycles who are doing things legally and carefully, then all they're doing is promoting more of that, because the public at large won't give a damn either. So I want to thank you for listening to me. This has been difficult for me to share this because it's been such a difficult time. It's been 8 months now of in and out of surgeries. And in all that time, I've never heard from the person who ran me down. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr. Duck. And we're pleased that you're recovering, and really sorry that you had to go through all that, but thank you for sharing your story with us.
Well, you're very welcome.
Questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Next, speaking as a proponent is Jim Tassick. Jim, nice to see you again. Welcome. Is he with us? Yes.
Yep.
There he is. Yes. Nice to see you.
Likewise, I'm happy to be here. Greetings, Chair Diamond and Martin and other members of the Committee on Transportation. My name is James Tassi, and I'm here on behalf of the Bicycle Coalition of Maine to urge an ought to pass vote from the Transportation Committee on LD 821, an act to improve the investigation and prosecution of cases that involve vulnerable users. As the leading statewide organization advocating for pedestrians and people on bikes, the Bicycle Coalition of Maine hears frequently from victims and grieving families about crashes with motor vehicles, which often result in life-changing injuries or death, as you've heard from the last several testifiers. Sadly, we also hear frequently that even in cases where the driver is clearly at fault, no tickets, charges, or penalties are imposed on the driver, again, as you've heard from the previous testimony. The law enforcement officers who respond to bicycle and pedestrian crashes have a tough job. They must both investigate the facts of a crash and decide what the contributing factors in the crash were. And if they find that the driver's actions have contributed to the crash, they must decide whether or not to take legal action, often with that driver present. Officers' human empathy and their understanding that a crash was not deliberate can influence the analysis of the facts. Uncertainty about whether the case meets the standards for prosecution can result in officers choosing a lesser course of action than pursuing charges. LD 821 will change this situation by requiring a DA to review any case of a crash that results in the injury or death of a vulnerable user and permit a more deliberative, objective, and impartial decision removed from the immediate circumstances of the crash. This bill will provide justice to vulnerable users as well as protections for drivers who will also have their cases reviewed by DAs if they are involved in a collision with a vulnerable user. The law will provide greater consistency in the legal response and better records of these incidents. The language and the structure and language of the bill before you is adapted from Title 25, Section 3871. It reflects a policy already extant in Maine law that's extended to victims of sexual assault, also a horribly vulnerable class of users. I'd like to point out, because they're not here to speak today, that the Cumberland County Sheriff's Office has submitted testimony supporting the bill and the proposed revisions that my understanding is have been circulated among you guys already. If this bill becomes law, this change in statute will make law enforcement officers' jobs easier by letting them focus on accurate and detailed collection of facts and putting the burden of whether to issue charges in the hands of the district attorney. It will create greater consistency in crash response. All injury and fatal crashes will get the same legal review from the DA's office. It will not be a burden on DAs, as the maximum number of cases like this is estimated to average out to fewer than 8 per week statewide. I had the opportunity to speak with the Cumberland County District Attorney, Jonathan Sauerbeck, back in December as we were working on this legislation, and he did not feel that this law would be burdensome at that time. This law, or this bill, if passed and made law, will encourage drivers to be more careful if they know that their actions will be reviewed by a DA in the event of a crash involving a person walking or bicycling. The law will create a better database that captures the frequency with which injury and fatal crashes involving vulnerable users result in citations or charges. This is something that we've been actually trying to research, and there's simply no information to be had about it. The Bureau of Violations has not been able to come up with accurate information about the frequency with which drivers are charged or cited in cases like this. Perhaps most of all, passing this bill will acknowledge the seriousness of this problem and will begin the process of treating vulnerable people walking or bicycling on roadways who are injured or killed more like victims of gun violence or sexual assault, where the DA has input into the process. Passing this bill will help to recognize and seek to address the epidemic of vulnerable user deaths and life-changing injuries by making charges and citations against bad drivers a more common outcome of a crash. And it will help drive more accurate crash investigations and reporting on the part of police officers. It's time for the legal system to do a better job for the vulnerable users on Maine's roads. Passing LD 821 is an important step in that direction. The bill that you've seen printed has been the subject of ongoing discussions. There are a series of amendments that have been proposed, and Senator Daughtry made reference to them. We support the amendments and urge you to adopt them in the work session, and at that time also vote ought to pass on LD 821. I'm happy to take any questions you might have. Thank you very much for your time and the opportunity to testify.
Thank you, Mr. Tassi. And again, we appreciate your being here with us today. It's nice to see you again. Representative O'Connell has a question.
Yes, thank you for being here, sir. I can't help but notice, and I'm sure other members have too, that everybody that's reported, almost everybody that's reported that has been hit, they've been hit from behind. I'm going to self-report. I ride a bicycle. I ride against traffic. I mean, write me up, but I'm still here and I haven't been hit. Is there any reason why we can't have a law that says we can ride against the traffic?
I would say it's a bad idea, and the reasons are these. Number one, currently it's in statute, of course, that you're supposed to ride with traffic. Number two, creating a carve out like that in Maine would be an exception from bike riding law that exists nationally. And from a practical point of view, it would put you at extraordinary risk. Riding against traffic has been documented as arguably the single most dangerous thing that you can do on a bicycle. And you only need to think about what happens when you come to a T intersection in your car to envision how dangerous this could be. When you come up to a T intersection, you stop and you're trained in driver's ed to look left, right, and left again. So at any such intersection like that, really 2/3 of a driver's attention is directed to the left, where they're expecting oncoming traffic to come from. If you're riding against traffic and, perhaps, partly obscured by a bush or some vegetation at the road's edge, that driver never sees you coming, pulls out in front of you and results in a crash that actually has the bicycle rider operating in an illegal fashion, and it puts you at a disadvantage from the possibility of getting into a crash in the first place, and then it puts you at a legal disadvantage if a crash does occur. So I've heard of, there are people who believe that that would be a safer thing to do, but statistically looking at the national situation, I don't think it's a good idea, and it is not generally recognized as a best practice for bicycle operation.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I self-reported.
Thank you, Representative O'Connell. Other questions from the committee? Seeing none. Thank you very much. It was nice to see you. And
Likewise, thank you.
The next and last testifier in support of is Lori Boxer Maycumber. Welcome. Good afternoon. Oh, you're on a mute.
There we go.
There you go. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you all again. I did testify a couple of years ago on the distracted driving legislation and on other bicycle legislation. So it's always nice to be with you all. And thank you. I know it's been a long day, so I will try to keep my testimony short. And what I did want to do was start out by addressing Representative Martin's question about couldn't we just pop a penalty or some more specific citation into this statute so that the DA knows exactly what we want? Some states have vulnerable road user legislation that actually provide for some type of a penalty when someone hits a person who's riding a bike or is walking. This legislation is not designed to do that. It could, but in Maine, we already are fortunate enough to have a number of statutes that require the DA to take action when a vulnerable road user is harmed. For example, there are some statutes that say if you fail to yield to a yield sign and drive into a bicyclist, that should be a criminal charge. That's under 2063 of the Motor Vehicle and Traffic Code. Another example is if you end up causing the death of someone while engaged in another traffic violation, the DA could charge you with a civil violation instead of choosing to charge criminally if he or she didn't believe it rose to a criminal charge. And then there are, driving to endanger charges and other charges that relate to distracted driving or substance use. So the point of this legislation is really actually to leave a lot of discretion with the DA's office. We're not saying that the DA needs to charge every single thing that comes by her desk or his desk. It's really a piece of legislation to add, like a belt and suspenders approach to the review of these cases, because what we're seeing across the state is that these cases are handled so differently and so arbitrarily depending on who happens to respond to a crash and what resources that organization, that law enforcement agency has available to them on that day, and who is the responding officer, whether they've had 9 months of training and they're a new officer, or whether they are someone that has handled 50 of these cases over the course of years. And so in order to promote consistency, this legislation was recommended to us actually by a DA who said to me in a case, in sexual assault cases, these things get referred to us on a regular basis, and we can use our legal training and our know-how and what we learned in law school to help the law enforcement officers make charging decisions, or we're the ones that make them at the end of the day, but they don't slip by us because of that legislation. So when that DA said that to me, I hadn't been aware of LD 1140, which was passed a couple of years ago, which is a similar bill relating to victims of sexual assault. I looked at that and talked to representatives and was with Jim Tassi, who went to talk to Jonathan Sarbeck about this legislation. And the more that we talked it through, the more it made sense. Because really what we're not looking to do is take away anyone's decision-making power or force someone to prosecute something that shouldn't be prosecuted. But what we need here in this state in order for people like Jaja Martin and Sidney Michael Duck and Mr. Milliken and all these other people that are being harmed, what we need is a more uniform and systematic way of approaching these crashes. So that's really what we're here for. And, you know, in reviewing the opposing submissions, there really isn't anything substantive that concerns me as an attorney. I really think that we're not asking DAs to make a decision, you know, within that quick period of time in which something's being reported. What we're looking for is some type of an iterative approach between the law enforcement officers and the DAs, and having a DA be aware, having something on their radar screen, and knowing that if they think that something's worth pursuing, they can say to the investigating officer, hey, please go back and secure the phone. Please go back and get a witness statement from this person. And early on, trying to make sure that these cases are handled properly. And for the driver's protection, in cases where there shouldn't be a charge, the driver gets to know that they're not going to be charged probably sooner rather than later, rather than having something lingering over their head. So it's not just good for the victim, but it's also good for the driver. And if you look at the sister legislation that this was modeled after, there really hasn't been much of a fiscal impact. And you know, if you read my responses to the opposing submissions, which is on page 4 of my testimony, you'll see that I'm a believer that when you have good policies in place, you actually save the state money, because a lot of people, a lot of cases that I turned down, and I may have shared this with you in prior testimony, but a lot of cases that I turned down are cases where people are hit and maybe they weren't doing the right thing, and they're on, you know, main care, and so then the state ends up paying for their benefits, or you know, the emergency response program ends up spending money on emergency and law enforcement response, and if we have good policies in place and if our roads are safer, we're avoiding, hopefully, those types of crashes, because we're creating an environment and a culture where driving safely is expected, where people know that if they don't drive safely, there's going to be follow-up by the DA's office, there's going to be follow-up by law enforcement, and that this is a priority for our legislature and our governor and others. So that is why we're trying to do this type of legislation that appears to be softer, but really is creating a new social norm for the state, and a new way of making sure that prosecutors are aware of these cases and the frequency in which they're occurring and are doing something about it to send the message to the public that we've got to do a better job on our roadways. So that is my testimony. The more thorough version is in the written testimony. And I also would just answering another question that came up about the definition of vulnerable user. Some people say vulnerable user, some people say vulnerable road user. We in Maine have the term defined already in our definition section of the Motor Vehicle and Traffic Code. And so the original version of this legislation actually said, you know, the term vulnerable user as it's defined in section 101, I think it's 91, I can't remember exactly. But then I think probably the revisor took it off because, or whoever does the revisions, because they probably felt it was redundant. So anyway, you know, it probably makes sense to refer people back to the definition because not everyone knows what it is yet, but we do already have it in our definition section.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your testimony.
Sure.
Thanks for being with us. Are there questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Great, thank you.
And our last testifier is neither for nor against, Lieutenant Bruce Scott. Good afternoon, Lieutenant.
Good afternoon, sir. I'll be short and succinct on this.
Good.
Senator Diamond, Representative Martin, and distinguished members of the Joint Standing Committee on Transportation. My name is Lieutenant Bruce Scott. I'm the commanding officer of the State Police Traffic Safety Unit, and I'm here today to testify on behalf of the Department of Public Safety and the Maine State Police, neither for nor against LD 821. This bill requires police officers to report to the DA's office the details of an investigation of any accident involving a vulnerable user within 60 days. There's no exception to this requirement, even in circumstances where the police officer does not believe any crime or violation of law has occurred. This may unnecessarily create a greater burden on already strained resources for police agencies and for district attorney's office across the state. This bill also has some language that appears to be problematic, as it also requires a law enforcement officer to inform the DA's office if there is any allegation of criminal violations that endangered a vulnerable user or their property. Meaning if anyone alleges that a criminal violation endangered the user or their property, even if there isn't evidence to support that assertion, even if there isn't a crash, it must be reported to the DA's office. I also wanted to point out that under current law, Title 22, Section 3027 requires law enforcement officers to notify the DA's office of any motor vehicle crash in which any physical injury caused by a motor vehicle results in death. This law already ensures that the most serious of crashes are reported to the DA's office. For these reasons, we're neither for nor against LD 821. I will point out that I did have a chance to work with James Tass with the Bicycle Coalition of Maine, and we were able to come, what I believe, to an agreement on some good language for this bill so that we could get behind it and support it. I have not seen the final amendment, but would be glad to look through that and work with the group during your work session to come up with language that I feel is appropriate and will also accomplish the task. I think there's a misconception that getting a ticket means that it changes the outcome. And in law enforcement, we don't quite operate that way. And I recognize that discretion in police officers is wide and it varies depending on the officer that you have. And that's very clear with any violation in any crime. I'll point out that since 2019, the Maine State Police has only issued 38 tickets for failure to yield the right-of-way, yet we investigate about 40,000 crashes a year. It's not the norm for us to issue a ticket just because somebody violated the law, and we certainly don't every time. So I didn't want any confusion that us writing a ticket changes the outcome. We believe that it doesn't. We believe that our job is to do the investigation. If it warrants reporting it, report it. But not necessarily issuing a ticket for every offense that we observe. Otherwise, we would never stop writing tickets. I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant. As usual, very helpful. Are there questions from the committee? So you are working with on an amendment that possibly with Jim Tassi that could actually maybe come to everybody's agreement and it might solve the problem as you all see it?
I think so. I think we can definitely have some language that solves the problems that we see, takes care of some of the language that's vague and ambiguous, and we'll still have that requirement. 5 days to report it is a little bit difficult to get past, but we could talk about all that in the work session and try to come up with something that works for everyone.
Well, thank you for doing that. We appreciate, look forward to hearing what you might have to say. Representative Perry, did you have a question?
No, that, yeah, you guys just answered it. And that
Oh, okay.
because it definitely needs some amending done.
Right, yes.
So we'll see that at work session.
Further questions from the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much, Lieutenant, for being with us.
You're welcome.
That concludes our testimony on our final bill. We are now finished, and anybody have any comments? Chairman Martin, do you have anything to add before we conclude officially?
I do not. I do not. I think we're good.
Good. Anybody else have anything at all to bring up? If not, we'll see you all Thursday, which will be another full day, and we'll talk more about some of the details then. Thank you very much, everybody. We'll see you.
See you later.
Transportation.